Hi everyone, for our video today, I'm just going to be talking about the Voyage set again from Sonia G by Tesshyu. And I'm going to be doing side-by-side comparisons with other brushes that I have here, which is comparable to this. And this was actually highly requested by some of my followers, so I am hoping that you're going to find this useful and insightful, okay? So at this portion of the video, I already have some foundation down and concealer and also skincare. So everything that I use on my video today is actually going to be on the description box, okay? So I'm actually coming from my video wherein I talked about Lisa Eldridge's Pinpoint concealer. So if you're interested to hear my opinion about this, link is down in the description box, okay? And if you want to see or hear my first impressions for the Voyage set, link is also on the description box, okay? All right, so what I'm gonna do is I am gonna be using the Voyage set on one portion of my face and then the other brushes on one portion on my face, okay? All right, so now let's start with setting first. So I have my translucent powder here from Laura Mercier. I'm just gonna put a little bit of the powder here on the cap, and I'm gonna use the Sora brush here, and I'm gonna tap it here onto the cap and pick up the product. So again, it picks up quite a good amount of product, and I'm just gonna remove any excess here. And I'm just gonna tap this all over my face. Okay, so as you guys can see, it's actually delivering a very nice amount of coverage, no patchiness, very nice blending as well, and also buffing. Now what I love about this is that when I'm using it in a tapping motion, the bristles at the tips here kind of like flattens, and it applies the products and spread it out. And because it has a very soft bristle type, even if it's mixed with Chikuhodo, it actually really does the job of just applying the right amount of powder on the face. No patchiness at all, and it's not disturbing the foundation that I apply below, or even the concealer, things like that. And it's also not changing the color of my foundation, which is good, because after all, even if this powder from Laura Mercier is dubbed as translucent, there's a certain hint of color that this applies on the skin. It also changes the color of the foundation sometimes. So that's what I love about the Sora brush here, because it just does the job of working very well and not altering the color of my skin. Okay, look at that, very nice and very easy. Okay, so now let me pour more of the loose setting powder here, and now I'm gonna get a full gray squirrel powder brush, and this is the Chikuhodo MK-UM brush, the Ume brush. So this is the one that has the plum design on the handle here. This is one of my most favorite brushes. And then I have a ton of the powder here on the bristle, so let me just remove any excess, and now let me pat it onto my skin. Now the Ume brush here, the bristle tips are actually very soft, and I think you guys have noticed that it actually does apply more powder, and it would need to buff out on my skin, especially in the portion where I applied the powder. And you can actually see that there's already a white cast here because I applied way too much powder, and I actually don't get that here on this portion. So I'm just gonna buff that out just so that I have a much more well-balanced application of color. And also, because the brush head of this is round, you can't get into specific hard to reach areas on the face. Example here in the under eye area near the nose, because with the Sora brush here you can actually do that, especially if you're just working with the tips of the bristles, so you can just really mount the brush head very specifically there, and it's actually able to deliver powder very nicely. Again, very well balanced and very even. Now, does this mean that the MK-UM brush is a bad brush? Of course not. This is a very beautiful brush, very soft, very silky, and it actually feels silkier than the Sora brush, because again we have the mixture here of the Chikuhodo goat hair And of course, the brush head designs are very, very different, wherein this is actually like, a little bit pointed, okay, and quite erect. Look at the snapback of that. So we can see that, there's so much strength in the core of this in comparison to the MK-UM here. Look at that. Look at how soft it goes back into shape. I love this brush. It's still one of my most favorite brushes to use ever. Now, I do actually want to apply some bronzer on the face using the MK-UM and the Sora brush, but we'll do that a little bit later because I don't want to muddy up the face, especially that I want to use some blush on us right now, okay? Now, on the Voyage Set First Impressions vlog, I actually compared the Omui brush to the Mini Cheek and to the REN-07 brush. So what we'll be doing in this portion is that I'm going to show you guys how the Mini Cheek and the REN-07 actually differs, or maybe is very similar to the Omui brush, okay? Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this blush. So this is matte, so this is from Laura Mercier and this is the color Strawberry. And I'm just going to pat the Omui brush very lightly onto the pan. So we have some product here, maybe tap off the excess. And I'm just going to lightly pat it here on my cheeks. Okay, so as you guys can see, we have a very nice soft application of color. Again, also very precise because the brush head is very small. And we're actually also able to buff that out and to blend it out. And I love the size of this, and the main reason why is because my cheeks are very, very small, and if I go beyond this portion of my cheeks, it's gonna make me look like my under eye highlight is popping, and that's not a good look. Okay. Okay, so this is how the first impact of color the Omui brush applies on the face. Very nice and very soft, very, very delicate. And then if I want to intensify it, you can always go back and pick up more color and layer on as necessary. I love the size of this brush head, by the way, because it just really cups my cheekbones quite nicely. Okay, so I'm just gonna buff out the edges now. Okay, so now let's try the Mini Cheeks. I'm just gonna lightly pat it with almost the same amount of pressure, and I'm gonna pat it on this portion of my cheeks now. And as you guys can see, the Mini Cheek is also delivering a very soft application of color, also very well blended, and quite similar to the initial application of color that the Omui brush delivered on this side of the cheek. Again, they almost have the same sizes. They cup my cheekbones quite nicely, but the Omui brush actually blooms out more in comparison to the Mini Cheek. Okay, so again, it all depends on the pressure that you're actually applying. So let me pick up more color and let me build this up. So if you are finding that you want to add a certain intensity of color into your cheek, all you have to do is to pick up the same color and just pat it. Don't buff it out, because if you're going to buff it out, it's really gonna soften the color. Alright, so as you guys can see, the Omui brush and the Mini Cheek brush here deliver almost very similar results, but the main difference is that the bristle of the Mini Cheek here is made of Chikuhodo tears, and it's also dyed, so it's actually stronger. If you want to have a more vibrant application of color, the Omui brush will do that, and if you want a very soft application of color, the Mini Cheek will actually do that. Okay, so I did reset this side of my face. I removed the blush and then I applied some foundation and some powder again, because now what I want to do is I want to use the REN-07 brush in applying this color. So let me tap the brush head and then apply it in the highest points of my face, and let me buff out the edges. Okay, so look at that. This is the first initial color that the REN-07 applies on the skin. And again, we have this very nice soft application of color, very diffused. Again, very similar on how the Omui brush and even, where's that? The mini cheek brush applies color on the face. Now, the mini cheek brush here and the REN-07 have stronger bristles in comparison to the Omui brush. That's why we have a much more diffused application of color. Now, because the REN-07 here has a bigger brush head, it will apply more color in a bigger real estate on the face and in comparison to these two brushes. And if you want to apply more intensity, all you have to do is to pick up more of the color and pat it in the area where you want to. Okay, so now it's time for some bronzer, and I'm going to be using this Charlotte Tilbury airbrush bronzer, and I'm going to just lightly tap the brush head of the Sora brush here, and look how much product this brush head picks up. So let me get the MK-UM here, and let me just again tap it and put them up here beside each other so that you guys can see on the difference between how much product each brush picks up. So again, the MK-UM here, we have a very concentrated pickup of color in this portion of the brush, while the Sora here, much more diffused, pickup of the color. Okay, right, so now let's just apply this on my face right now, and I'm gonna apply it right on top of the blush, right here on my cheekbones. And I'm gonna apply some of that here as well on my non-existent hairline and blend it out. So the Sora here, immediately will apply a very nice diffused amount of color in no time. And because the brush head here is paddle-like in design, it's also applying the color in a very directional manner, and it's just cupping my cheekbones easily, and it's giving us this very nice angular application of the color already. Nice blend of colors as well. Right, so now I have the MK-UM here, and I'm just gonna apply this on top of the blush again. Okay, look at that. Then I'm also gonna apply a little bit of that here on my non-existent hairline and buff everything. Okay, so what difference can you guys see? So this one has almost a very nice precise application of color but still diffused, but this one is extremely diffused and soft. So that's the main difference between these two brushes. Okay, all right, so now let's talk about the Nagare brush. So this is the only eyeshadow brush on the Voyage set, and on my first impressions video for the Voyage set, I actually compared the brush head shape of this to the T3 and to the original crease one from the previous fundamental set of Sonia G, wherein I thought that the Nagare brush here is in terms of shape, between these two brushes, wherein the Nagare brush head here has a rounded and almost tapered brush head design. Now, I am not gonna compare how the Nagare brush compares in terms of performance to the crease one here, because the crease one here is made of Chikuhodo gold here. But what I'm gonna do is that I'm actually going to compare the Nagare brush to the OG crease one brush, wherein it's made of squirrel hair. So let me go get that. Alright, so it's here now. So I actually forgot that I purchased this back in December, and the main reason why is because when I got this package, it was just sitting on my table and I was in my home in the province, and also because it's not available for purchase anymore, so I wasn't thinking that it was worth it to create a video. But if you do want me to talk about the OG crease one brush, pencil one brush, and the builder one brush, please let me know down in the comments box, and if I see any interest, I'm gonna make a video for that. Okay, but anyway, I digress. So let's try out these brushes now on my eyes, okay, including the T3s. Okay, so I'm still gonna be using my Chanel Le Cat Ombre in Clair Obscur here, because this is matte, and I always use squirrel makeup brushes for matte eyeshadow application. So I'm gonna start by picking up this color here. Again, very strong brush head. You see how much eyeshadow fluffed out of the pan, and let me just lightly apply that onto my eyelid here. Very easy, very even, and again, I can be very detailed and be very specific on where I want to apply that first laydown of color. And now I'm gonna be using the crease one brush. Same. We still see some product fluffing, like, you know, from the pan. But I do have to say, basing off of that, like, you know, experience alone, I think the Nagare brush has a much more stronger core than the crease one brush here. But in terms of performance, we're actually still able to apply color all over the eyelid. And you can also be very specific and detailed with your application, because after all, the tips here, both of them anyway, are tapered. Okay, now let's go and pick up the warmer shade here. Remove some excess here on my palm. And then I'm just gonna lay that here onto my socket line and apply the color and buff it out. Look at that. Again, very easy, very soft application of color, but we have some definition now. Then let's buff out the edges. Let's try to create a lift for my eye. And now I'm gonna go back, load the tip of the bristle here, just a tip. And then I'm gonna use that to add a very nice, like, you know, light flick of the color here in the outer portions. Look at that. There's already like a soft definition. And then let's just blend that into the crease and buff it out. Okay, let's intensify the outer V portion. Blend the color into my crease and buff it out and wing it out just a little bit. Okay, look at that. We're actually able to buff out the edges, to blend it out, soften it, but we're also able to apply a nice soft definition of color into the socket line. Okay, now to the OG crease one here. Pick up the same color, mount it here into my crease area and blend it into my crease. Alright, so basing off of this experience, the OG crease one here still delivers, like, you know, pigment extensively well. And like, you know, it still buffs out color quite nicely, but it's just, like, you know, softer in the core. In comparison to the Nagare brush here, it doesn't have, like, you know, some buffing ability. But the thing with, like, you know, squirrel makeup brushes is that when you apply color in a very specific, like, part of the face, you have to be very determined, because that's where the color is gonna lay and you won't be able to drag it out. But, like, you know, in terms of buffing ability, like, you know, you have more buffing in the Nagare brush than in the crease one brush. Okay, let's get this highlighting shade from this palette from Hourglass. Same process in my, like, you know, Voyage set first impressions video. Let me apply that here into my mobile lid for some drama. Picks up the pigment quite nicely. I don't get any, like, you know, product fall down. Holds it very, very well. Very nice. And then the OG crease one. Pick up the highlighting powder here. Alright, so I can actually see that the crease one here applies a much more opaque amount of pigment of this on the eyelid, while the Nagare brush on this eye applies a much more sheer, thinned out, and well blended, like, you know, color on the eyelid. And I think that's the main difference between these two, because the strength of both of these brushes on the core are very, very different. And that's why our colors here are softer, also well blended out, while here with the crease one, it's actually more precise, and more opaque, and more, like, you know, pigmented. Now the T3 here, this will apply a very nice, like, you know, soft blend of color. So this is like really a nice, like, you know, buffing brush. And you can use this brush in tandem with these two brushes that I showed you guys today, just, like, you know, to really help to blend out the color and the edges. Now I don't really want to compare the T3 brush here to the Nagare brush, because the bristles are very, very different. But it's very apparent now, especially that we have the OG, like, you know, crease one here with the squirrel brush head, wherein it's really, like, you know, tapered into a point. And the Nagare brush here is, like, you know, really a combination of the T3 and the crease one here. Look at that. amazing. Okay, yeah, and I guess we're nearing the end of this short vlog. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna apply some highlighting powder now, and I'm gonna be using maybe this nice warm shade using the Omoe brush and a little bit of this, and apply it on top here. So we have a nice diffuse amount of color, well blended, also very well placed, because that's the beauty of having small brush heads like this. And I'm also gonna do that the same for the mini cheek here. Pick up a little bit of this and apply it here. Okay, so for this purpose, the mini cheek delivers a softer application of color, very well buffed, while the Omoe brush here, we can see that it delivered a very determined amount of color on the face. Because after all, squirrel brush head, it will not have so much power like this, Chikuhodo brush head of the mini cheek. Okay, all right, so I hope that you guys found this update useful and insightful, and also I hope that this comparison can also shed light on the differences and the similarities between some of the brushes. And truthfully, the difference is very subtle, and the application of makeup really depends on your technique, the kind of products that you use, and also your makeup sentiments. Because for me, I like soft makeup looks, so it's very automatic that with every brush that I use, I always try to ensure that this is the type of makeup look that I always end up applying on the face. Okay, all right, so if you have any more questions about the Voyage set or any of the brushes that I used today, please let me know down in the comments box, and let's have a conversation about it. All right, okay, so I'm gonna let you guys go now. Thank you so much for watching, thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye.